They named her Solène, born during the 14th sol of the Martian spring. Beneath a dome that shimmered with refracted sunlight filtered through 1,000 layers of protective shielding. No cries, no complications, just silence then breath, and the soft whir of the incubator echoing off the curved walls of Habitat C. It was the first human birth on another world. Cameras rolled. The Earthside stream went viral before her eyes even opened. 1 million hearts held still as one new one began to beat. The colony gathered in the main dome that night. Scientists, engineers, the agritech crew, even the maintenance staff from Subdeck 3. They passed around vacuum-sealed champagne, stared at a projection of the newborn's biometric charts, and told each other it felt like history had shifted. Some swore the wind outside the Hab tunnels moved differently that night, less like dust and more like breath. For the first time, the colonists felt less like tenants and more like descendants. But quietly, deep inside the med logs, something didn't align. Solène's heartbeat didn't behave like any baseline they'd prepared for. It wasn't a defect. There were no signs of distress, no circulatory anomalies. But the rhythm was irregular in the most consistent way possible. Like a song played in 7/8 time, never resolving, always repeating. The attending medic flagged it for postnatal review, then moved on. After all, they were understaffed and overjoyed. Who wanted to dampen a miracle? In her 3rd day, Solène began to mimic sounds. Not cooing, structured pulses. The medbay's environmental mics picked up soft syllables at random intervals. She would lie still, eyes unfocused, and murmur something that hovered between vowel and static. Initially, they attributed it to atmospheric interference in the recording feed. But then she repeated it, and again. Same tone, same length, always in 3s. The psychologist on rotation, Dr. Kira Knoll, listened to one of the recordings during a break. It made her uncomfortable. Not because of what it was, but because of what it wasn't. It didn't sound like an infant at all. It reminded her of something she couldn't name, like a code she'd once heard on a shortwave emergency loop, buried beneath weather warnings. Out of curiosity and a tinge of insomnia, Dr. Knoll ran the audio through the colony's onboard language model, K-Lingui. The AI flagged it as unknown structured phoneme clusters. But more importantly, it flagged the sequence as non-random. It was trying to find a pattern and kept coming back with the same conclusion. The baby was not mimicking human language. It was producing one. The staff held a private session the following sol. No press, no Earthside uplink. Just 4 crew members, 1 sleeping child, and a bank of monitors looping her vocalizations. They tried everything, overlaying pitch graphs, checking for substrata in the acoustic signal, comparing to known languages ancient and modern. None matched, but one element recurred. The same set of phonemes, spaced in timed intervals, each repeating in prime number gaps. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds. The colony's head of communications suggested it could be environmental. Perhaps resonance from the air filtration system creating harmonics. But when the room was fully powered down, the child still murmured. Not louder, but clearer, as if silence was what it needed to be heard. Outside, Mars turned its ochre face toward the stars. The winds rose, scattering powdered rust across the dome's outer shell. The baby slept soundly. By the 6th sol, the whispers had stopped. Not gone, paused. Every instance had occurred at roughly the same time each day, during a specific REM stage. As if the sound was not random, but triggered, predictable, scheduled. The crew didn't panic. Not yet. They documented. They measured. They speculated in private voice logs. But no one admitted what they were really feeling. That something had spoken first. That maybe Solène wasn't speaking to Mars. She was speaking for it. It began with data. Rows of transcribed phonemes, time-coded from the colony's monitoring logs and uploaded to every language model in the off-world archive. Dozens of systems chewed through them. Classical linguistics, cryptographic neural nets, sound pattern classifiers. Most returned the same verdict: noise. Beautiful, structured, strangely timed noise. But one didn't. A minor legacy AI buried in the colony's geology suite, once used for interpreting seismic anomalies, flagged the pattern, not as language, but as resonance. It didn't belong in the linguistic library at all. It belonged with sound, deep sound, infrasound, frequencies that no human throat should produce, and no human ear should hear. Its match? A single event. One entry buried in a forgotten mission log from the Martian probe Arcus 9, which had been lost during an unexplained electromagnetic pulse 6 years earlier. That probe had recorded low-frequency pulses during its final hours, just before signal loss, in Valles Marineris, the Great Scar of Mars. And now, this newborn child was reproducing that same sequence, same rhythm, same intensity, except she wasn't broadcasting. She was dreaming. Solène had started humming, not the soft coos of comfort or confusion, but a breathy, internal rhythm, barely audible, like a wire vibrating beneath the surface of sleep. Always in the same cadence, always at the same depth of sleep. The colony's neuromonitoring chair confirmed that her REM cycles aligned exactly with the pattern. She wasn't learning. She was remembering. And then the dream spread. Dr. Kira Knoll was the first to report symptoms. Vague at first. Insomnia. A pulsing in her ears that didn't go away with rest. But then came the dreams. Stark, silent, and geometric. She described wide corridors etched with symbols too worn to translate. Stone that wasn't stone. Gravity that shifted between steps. And always, always, that sound pulsing behind the dream like a buried heartbeat. She awoke with blood drying under her nose and a taste of copper on her tongue. Others followed. A technician on solar panel maintenance fell from the ladder after freezing mid-task, claiming he saw lights beneath the regolith. The hydroponics assistant began humming in her sleep, perfectly matching Solène's rhythm. A maintenance drone inexplicably rerouted itself toward the southern ice ridge, tracing a spiral pattern into the frost before shutting down. The colony command reviewed all logs and filed the situation under psychogenic contagion. A shared delusion, they called it. A symptom of proximity stress, sleep cycle disruption, and the subconscious yearning for mystery on a dead world. But the logs didn't agree. The AI monitoring system, usually passive and reserved, activated a dormant subroutine. A failsafe designed only to trigger in the event of biological signal correlation. It began aligning Solène's vocal patterns with Martian crustal readings. And the match was unnerving. The infant's hums aligned with seismic tremors recorded beneath Olympus Mons, a long-dormant volcano. The colony had never even considered it a risk. But now its interior echoed back a signature that wasn't random. It responded. The sound was not coming from the baby. It was moving through her, as if she were not the origin. But the transmitter, down in the server banks, an encrypted file generated itself, unsigned, with no creator tag. Just a timestamp and a title, Return Cycle 1. It was empty, but the timestamp was for 2 days from now. That night, no one in the colony reported any dreams. But the sky darkened sooner than usual. The sun's angle should not have changed. The orbits remained stable. The math was correct. And yet, every clock felt slightly off. Like a breath held too long. Like the moment before thunder. Solène didn't make a sound that night. But in her sleep, her hand moved through the air, tracing shapes, spirals, prime sequences. And in the soil beneath the lab, deep sensors recorded a shift, 1 centimeter wide, 40 meters down. Not a quake, A pressure change. Something was listening back. They ringed the colony with sensors. At first, it was a precaution, an attempt to verify the growing unease with something measurable. If the baby's vocalizations carried seismic relevance, perhaps the Martian crust would reveal more than hallucination. The array activated in staggered pulses, each instrument embedded like a stethoscope into the frozen regolith. And almost immediately, the ground responded. The signals weren't violent. They weren't even classified as quakes, but they pulsed. Low-frequency tremors, barely strong enough to register as motion, began surfacing in the data. Not random, not tectonic. They arrived in patterns, timed precisely to Solen's REM cycles. Each night, as the child entered her deepest sleep, the sensors detected minute vibrations rippling outward in a radial pattern, as if her dreams had weight, as if thought could press down on stone. The phenomenon didn't stop at the edge of instrumentation. It escalated. A reconnaissance drone was dispatched to investigate an uncharted fissure northeast of the habitat, an old volcanic throat sealed by dust and time. It descended in silence, its infrared sensors flickering as it reached the lower strata. Then, static. The feed returned blank. But not entirely. When the corrupted footage was decompressed, one frame survived. It showed a surface, not metallic, not stone, but carved. The texture was jagged, unnatural, almost biological. Along the curve of the cavern wall was a single, unmistakable shape. An ear. Human in form, but wrong in proportion. Flattened. Extended. Designed not to hear, but to resonate. Half-buried. Listening. When the image was shown to the medical staff, Solen began to cry. Not like a baby, but like something deeply wrong had been shown to her. Her hands clutched her ears. Her pupils contracted into tiny pinpricks. The moment the screen powered off, she stopped. The reaction repeated itself. She cried whenever Earth origin media played in her presence. Human music, human voices, even the rhythmic hum of Earth's radio broadcasts, all agitated her. But when exposed to Martian static, raw environmental audio harvested from the planet's crust, she calmed. Sometimes she would hum along. Sometimes she would trace symbols in the air. The team started cataloging her reactions. Dr. Knoll, growing more isolated from the command center, began a private log, unapproved off-grid. In it, she posed a theory no one else dared entertain. What if Solen was not translating something alien? What if she was the translation, a child born of human biology, but shaped somehow by the latent signals of an ancient intelligence embedded in Mars' crust? Not a voice in her head, but an architecture of perception. Not possession, synchronization. She revisited the probe data. She reviewed the Arcus 9 event logs. Every pulse, every pattern. They matched Solen's breathing patterns before birth. Her prenatal monitor had flagged anomalies even then. They weren't anomalies. They were calibrations. The whispers weren't new. They were inherited. And then came the artifact. An excavation team stumbled on it while laying geothermal cable. Only a few meters down, beneath a patch of regolith previously scanned and declared barren, they found a capsule. Oval, smooth, sealed in some sort of silica, not native to any known Martian deposit. Inside dust, not Martian, not earthly, not meteoric. It shimmered faintly in lab light, not with color, but with resistance. Every time an instrument attempted to scan it, the readings returned null. Not empty, null. Not even the vacuum returned such silence. That night, Solen stopped sleeping. She stared at the ceiling for 12 straight hours, unblinking, her breath perfectly timed to the colony's power grid cycling. At sunrise, she spoke a full sentence. It wasn't in any known language, but one word matched. Again, Dr. Knoll wept, not from fear, but from recognition. She had heard that word once before, in her dream during the magnetic storm sequence. The ruins, the lights, the voice that said, "We wait again." The colony's soil wasn't dead. It remembered, and it was listening, still. It happened during the storm. The solar flare was minor by space standards. No direct coronal mass ejection, no lethal particle storm, but enough to trip the Martian colony's defensive protocols. Systems fell into low-power mode. Communications flickered. For 12 minutes, the station pulsed in emergency red. At the center of the medical wing, Solène lay still. Too still. No cry. No tremor. Her skin was cool, not cold. Her vitals flat. For all appearances, the first child born on Mars had gone silent. And yet, the lights danced. First in the East Corridor, then in the lab's filament lamps. The flickering wasn't random. It followed a rhythm, measured, spaced, nearly musical. A technician noticed it first. The flicker interval matched Solène's baseline heartbeat. 120 BPM. Exactly. Then came the hum. Low, like feedback from deep within the hull. It wasn't coming from inside the habitat. It was beneath it. The grid itself had picked up something, feeding it back into the electrical system. Lights, diagnostic screens, even dormant equipment began reacting. The colony wasn't failing. It was responding. A second heartbeat. The engineers scrambled. It had to be a loop, a glitch, a feedback artifact. But their log showed no such signature. The rhythm wasn't bouncing through the station. It was entering from below, from the crust. Somewhere deep inside Mars, the planet itself had become a listening chamber. The leadership called an emergency vote. The child had to be isolated, moved outside the main habitat into one of the unused bioshelters. Quarantine, they called it. Precautionary. But the implication was darker. The colony was afraid, not just of what Solène might become, but of what she already was. Dr. Knoll fought the order, but votes in space are final. She had 12 hours to prepare the child for relocation. She used that time to dig. With help from one remaining ally in the data archive, she requested all early atmospheric scans from the colony's founding. Before the habitat dome, before the first landing. Decades-old satellite records, long since buried in analog backups. She found it in a raw telemetry log from orbiter C9, back when it first entered orbit above Valles Marineris. The scan showed faint rhythmic pulses hidden in the ionosphere's magnetic bleed. Barely detectable, overlooked, but there, even then, a heartbeat, not strong, but present, the same spacing, the same spectral shape, identical. Solène hadn't started the signal. She had responded. This realization cracked something open, not just in Knoll's mind, but in the very foundations of Martian science. The anomaly wasn't new. The baby didn't create the pulse. She was its receiver, its echo chamber, its answer. The colony had assumed it was being haunted, but maybe it had been invited. The relocation was called off, not officially, just quietly buried. The heartbeat receded from the power grid slowly. The lights stopped flickering. Solène began breathing again, still not speaking, but her eyes were wide, clear, watching the red dust fall against the observation dome. No further seismic tremors were recorded, but the data kept updating, growing, refining. A map began to build itself from archived pulses, a shape beneath the colony, etched in the mineral veins of Mars itself. Not a building, not an organism, not even a signal, really. It was something in between. A memory, perhaps, or the ghost of intention left behind in crust and code. Solène reached for the glass. Her tiny hand left a smudge, perfectly symmetrical. Dr. Knoll stared at it for minutes. It was the same pattern found in the dust on the probe's lens years ago. The story wasn't ending. It was beginning again. And far below the red horizon, Mars pulsed once more,